All right, today we're going to go over section 5.3, which is on multiplying polynomials. Okay, and we're going to start with multiplying a monomial times another monomial. So let's say we have negative 1/3 y squared times 2/5 negative 1/3 y squared times 2/5 y. Now you're just going to multiply your numbers together like always. So when you multiply negative 1/3 times 2/5 is going to give you a negative answer. And then just multiply them together. 1 times 2 is 2, and 3 times 5 is 15. Okay, and then multiply your y's together. And when you're multiplying variables, you add their exponents. So that's going to give you y to the third. So that would just be negative 2/15 y to the third. Okay, next, a monomial times a polynomial. So this one can have so this one we're multiplying one term times either two or more terms. So let's say we have 3x times 2x plus 5. 3x times 2x plus 5. So you're just going to distribute your 3x. You're going to multiply 3x times everything in the parentheses. So when you multiply 3x times 2x, that gives you 6x squared, because when you multiply those x's together, you add their exponents. And then when you multiply 3x times 5, that's plus 15x. So that's just 6x squared plus 15x. All right, next up we have negative y times 4x cubed minus 7x squared y plus xy squared plus 3y cubed. So we have to multiply that negative y times everything in the parentheses. Okay, so let's start with negative y times 4x cubed. Now, a negative times a positive is a negative. 4x cubed y. You multiply that together. So you just multiply the y times the 4x cubed, and it's going to be negative. And y times 4x cubed is just 4x cubed y. Then we multiply it times the next term. Now, a negative times a negative is a positive. And we multiply y times 7x squared y, that's going to give you 7x squared y squared, because when you multiply those y's together, you add the exponents. And then the next one, when you multiply a negative y times a positive xy squared, it's going to give you a negative answer. You have an x, and when you multiply the y times y squared, is y cubed. And then when you multiply it times the last term, negative y times a positive 3y cubed is going to give you a negative 3y to the fourth power. And that's your answer. So you just multiply the negative y times everything in the parentheses. And you know when you multiply a negative, it changes the sign. So when you multiply by a negative, it's going to change all those signs that are inside the parentheses. All right, next we're going to do a binomial times a binomial. So 2 terms times 2 terms. Now when you do a binomial times a binomial, the easiest way to do it is to use the FOIL method, F-O-I-L, where the F stands for first terms, the O stands for outer terms, the I stands for inner terms, and the L stands for last terms. So it tells you an easy way to multiply it together so that the middle two can be combined easily. So it just gives you a good order to multiply them with. And you really don't have to use this order as long as you multiply everything in the first parentheses times everything in the second parentheses and combine like terms. It really doesn't have to be in this order. This is just the easiest way to do it. So let's say we have a plus 7 times a minus 2. Okay, now first terms, that means the first term in each parentheses. So that means a times a. Multiply that together first. A times a. A times a is a squared. Because you add the exponents when you multiply the a's. Next, you do the outer ones. The 2 on the outside. The a and the if you look at that, the a and the negative 2 are on the outside. If you multiply a times negative 2, that gives you negative 2a. Now you multiply your 2 inner ones together. 7 times a. 7 times a is 7a. And then last times last. 7 times negative 2 is negative 14. Now see, the reason you want to do it in this order is because it puts the 2 like terms in the middle beside each other. That's why that order is good. So that's a squared plus 5a minus 14 when you combine your like terms. Because negative 2a plus 7a is 5a. So that would be your answer. Okay. The next one, we have 3x squared plus 1 squared. 3x squared plus 1 in parentheses squared. Okay. Now since it's squared, that means the same thing as 3x squared plus 1 times itself. Anytime you square something, that means you're multiplying it times itself. And that's an important step. Make sure you realize that. You don't just square the first term and square the last term. That's not right. You have to write it down twice and then FOIL it out. So we'll do first times first. 3x squared times 3x squared is 9x to the 4th. Just multiply 3 times 3, and when you multiply the x's together, you add their exponents. Then we do the outer ones. So we'll multiply 3x squared times 1. 3x squared times 1 is just 3x squared. So plus 3x squared. Then we'll multiply the inner ones together. Well, the 1 and the 3x squared are the inner ones. 1 times 3x squared is just 3x squared. And then we'll multiply last times last. 1 times 1. 1 times 1 is 1. And now the 2 in the middle are like terms, so they can be combined. So just bring your 9x to the 4th down. 3x squared plus 3x squared is 6x squared plus 1. So that's your answer. Now remember, when you're adding those 3x squareds together, you don't add the exponents. You only add the exponents when you're multiplying. When you're adding, you keep the exponents the same. Alright, the last thing we're going to do is just a polynomial, so it could be any number of terms, times another polynomial. So in this one, you could have any number of terms in each one. So let's do this one. x plus 5, which is a binomial, times x cubed minus 3x plus 4. So a binomial times a trinomial here. Okay. What you have to make sure you do here is you multiply everything in the first parentheses times everything in the second parentheses. And then after you do that, you combine like terms. So I have to multiply this x times everything in the second parentheses, and I have to multiply 5 times everything in the second parentheses. Okay, so let's just start with the x. X times x cubed is x to the 4th. X times negative 3x is negative 3x squared. X times 4 is 4x. So we've got half of it done now. We've multiplied x times everything in the second parentheses. Now I'll go back and multiply 5 times everything in the second parentheses. So 5 times x cubed is 5x cubed. 5 times negative 3x is negative 15x. And 5 times 4 is 20. Now we combine any like terms. Okay, I don't have any other x to the 4th, so I'm just going to bring that down. I don't have but one 1x cubed, so I'm going to bring down the plus 5x cubed. I only have 1x squared, so I'm going to bring that one down. Okay, now 5x minus 15x. Let's see, 15 minus 4 is 11, so it's going to give you a negative 11x. And then I bring my plus 20 down. There's nothing to combine with that. So that would be your answer. X to the 4th plus 5x cubed minus 3x squared minus 11x plus 20. I put the 4 and x and the negative 15x together. And 4 minus 15 is negative 11. Any other questions?